Thanksgiving week. This is going to be a fun one. Not going to go over too many things because I know everybody's traveling in Turkey and whatever everybody does on Thanksgiving. I got meat on the smoker right now, and that's it. The things I'm going to cover. I'm going to talk about Thanksgiving, the games in general, and how to approach them. And it's not really just Thanksgiving. There's a lot more going on this week. I'm going to talk a little bit about the college football rankings. I'm going to also talk about some of these rivalry games in college, and and then I'm going to talk about the Colts. Talk about the Colts for a minute. So, first thing we'll talk about is we'll just talk Thanksgiving. So, big week. There was 3 NFL games on tomorrow. There's 2 college games on tomorrow. There's usually a couple college games, but you got to be really into college to actually care and pay attention to the teams that are playing. But a couple years ago, Mississippi played Mississippi State, and the Egg Bowl. That's a cool rivalry to see on a college or on Thanksgiving. But there's a couple college games, and then there's 2 NFL games now, with one being canceled. But then we go into Friday, and Friday is a whole just a full day of games, and there's some good ones. Oregon plays Oregon State. Notre Dame plays North Carolina. There's a lot of good games on Friday, and then we have our normal Saturday and Sunday. And traditionally, Saturday this week in college is rivalry weekend. COVID is specifically in the Big Ten, like with the team up north in Ohio State, that was moved back. But Auburn plays Alabama this weekend. This is business as usual. We just have more college football to go. Typically, we would be this weekend, and then next weekend would be championship Saturday. So college football's kind of odd with the schedule. So really, at this point in most years, the teams are what they're going to be. Some teams are one win away from a bowl. Some teams are just packing it in, just trying to win a couple games because they got an easy road and they're already in the playoffs. This is usually where Clemson pumps the brakes, and their rivalry is South Carolina, and normally that game doesn't mean anything. At least it hasn't really the last 5 years or so. But here's what I'm recommending with this weekend. Sunday and Saturday, we treat like a normal week. Normal investment, same way to go about it. Even money, spread it out. Wherever your press is from last weekend. Last weekend was a 5-5 record, but there were a couple in-game picks I threw out there, and I'm going to talk about in-game a little bit too. But Saturday and Sunday is a normal portfolio. It's a bigger portfolio this week because there were some uncertainties last week. So going back to what we've talked about before is when you see me throw out 11 games or 10 games, that's typically because there's a game or two that I really like, and I don't want to get carried away with it. So I throw another couple games out there to buy down the percentage if we were to lose 1 or 2 games. So Saturday and Sunday, we treat that like a normal week. I would take tomorrow, and just being Thanksgiving, the NFL, I would take that and I would not make those full investments. So again, if you're a $10 better, a $10 investor, we, for whatever reason, like using that money. I know everybody out there is betting more than that. But if you're a $10 investor, I would only invest $3 tomorrow. Typically, Thanksgiving games, there's weird things that happen. These are primetime games, just with weird schedules. An 11:30 game and a 2:30 game I'm sorry, it's 11:30 and then I think 3:30 in Central Time. That's a very different time adjustment for an NFL game. And these games are typically weird. Dallas has not been the greatest home team this year. It's an NFC East matchup, which for me, that makes it a walk away. Typically in those matchups, you're safe if you take the points, no matter who's playing who in those NFC East games. You're usually safe if you just simply take the points in the dog, no matter what it looks like on paper. But Thanksgiving, weird things happen. Detroit was my play tomorrow. I really like Detroit, and a year ago, I think everybody would say that that's a wild move. Houston was a playoff team, and they were looking pretty good. But it's Thanksgiving and it's odds, so I would bet 30% of your normal investment on tomorrow's games just to have some action. I would take a look if you want to keep it fun. I would take a look at DraftKings, and they have some pretty good contests going for the entire day. They'll take the two games and you build your lineup there, throw $5 at it at a chance to win, $1 million, $100,000, whatever it is. You can win those, but I wouldn't go much further than that. Thursday is not our thing. There's games to win, but but Saturday, Sunday, this is the business, and we're gonna try and keep it a normal business week. The other piece is with all this stuff going on, because I threw out Friday college pick, I threw out a Thursday college pick, and then there's NFL on Thursday. With all this going on, I think the total is 13 or 14 games. Go and play your Sunday action first. Lay your Sunday and Saturday action now, before we get into any wins or losses or anything else. If you go undefeated tomorrow, or or you have a winning day tomorrow and Friday put in there, you make your decision what to do. I'm looking at my Thursday and Friday as a cherry. If I win with the 30% investment on these plays, then I'm just going to take it out. I'm pulling it out of the account. I'm going to take a Saturday morning withdrawal, and I'm going into Saturday with all of my action laid for Saturday and Sunday. Friday, I feel a little bit different about the college game. That's going to be a full game, but uh, whatever takes place on Thursday and Friday, I'm taking it out. It's almost like we have 2 weeks within one. It sounds like I'm overcomplicating it, but the name of this game is minimizing risk and maximizing wins. If you take tomorrow and you don't take it seriously, it's just a 30% investment and you win it. Then you turn around, win Friday. Well, now you're going into the weekend and you're going to press it all. Well, if you're going into the weekend with 4 wins already, you don't really need any more. At 4 wins, I think at that point you need like 4 more uh, in order to make it a 8-5 week. So we don't want to get carried away with that money from Thursday to Friday. Plus, you don't want to be sitting on Thanksgiving stressed out watching a game, pissed off when you're around family you never see, or at least if you are able to be around family. So that's my approach to this weekend. We got 4 days of football, and I'm not even going to look at Monday night, and there I don't believe that there is a Sunday primetime game this week. But by the time Monday rolls around, I'm not even going to want to think about football. Um, you guys good on that before I move on to what's next?
Yeah. So, any changes on Friday with the college games? I mean, that's a difference than Saturday. I mean, does that change anything for us?
I don't change the way I look at those games, but there's not a lot of games that I'm willing to risk because again, this is rivalry week. So I'll tell you about the games that I looked at and just flat out walked away from. You got the Iron Bowl, 24.5 points. Auburn shows up in these games. Bama should blow them away. I mean, Bama should absolutely destroy them. But that 24.5, it'll be 25 by kickoff, that made it a walk away because now you're pretty much asking them to win by 30. And I don't know if they want to. This Auburn Bama, I've never really played it because uh, in the times that they were a close game, like going into the weekend, closely ranked, it never really turns into what I think the outcome should be. So this feels NFC East to me. So the Oregon State. The reason I went with that game is because I like the math and the number. I think that Oregon should win by about 20. But if this was 14 and a half, I wouldn't have gone there because that makes it just an odd number. Actually, 14 and a half, I might have gone there. But like Iowa, Nebraska, this is another rivalry game. Uh, Mississippi State, I do like that game. And it's because I like the coaching and the strategy better. The way that Lane Kiffin coaches, it, players are quicker to adjust to it than what's happening at Mississippi State. Leach and his offensive system is very complicated, and he just got there. He has not had time to recruit or work with the players on getting that air raid offense in place. He doesn't have the quarterback that he will eventually recruit. He doesn't have any of those systems in place. So that's why I went with that game, but I like it at the 9.5. If it was 10.5, I probably would have looked the other way in a rivalry. As far as the rest of the games go on Friday, I don't think it's any different for these players. College, they're still traveling. Like there's still significant travel in college. And I think that these players are pretty much used to it. But, you know, as I'm looking at it, it just seems business as usual. There's no weird kickoff times. And some of this travel really hasn't even been that intense. South Florida, Central Florida, they're both in Orlando. So nobody's traveling. They both get to sleep in their own beds. Iowa, Nebraska, that's about an hour drive. So we're not really looking at significant drive. Actually, Iowa, Nebraska is a little bit more than that. So no, to answer your question, I don't think the Friday college changes much at all. Other than the fact that we got rivalries this weekend, and you got to keep that stuff in mind because teams play up for these.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll talk about the Colts for a minute. So Muhammad asked the question, are the Colts for real? Well, I'll tell you, that's the only team that really scares me being a Chiefs fan. The Colts are truly the only team that scares me. They If they play a clean game, if Rivers plays a clean game, I think they can end up in the Super Bowl. They're number 5 in passing yards allowed. They're top 10 in sacks. They're number 3 in rushing yards. They're third in overall interceptions. Uh, where I where I walked away from that game this weekend is the takeaways and the turnover margin. They've had so many. They've taken the ball away so many times that they have a positive plus minus in turnover margin, but they've given the ball away 11 times. So they when they get into weird spots, Rivers turns the ball over. And so 17 takeaways to 11 giveaways. I don't like that number when they're going up against Tennessee, and Tennessee takes the ball away 15 times. They have a fantastic defense that generates turnovers. They take the ball away and they only give it back 5 times. And so that turnover margin is what made me walk away from that game. And this weekend, they beat Tennessee pretty big a couple weeks ago. So, but I think that this Tennessee team has changed. Henry is now running the ball, doing things that really you can't stop. So it'll be a test for the Colts defense. And so are they for real? Yes, I think they're for real. I'm scared to death of them as a Chiefs fan. But at the same time, I'm not willing to I'm not willing to invest in them this weekend to find out if they can beat Tennessee 2 times. Um, they're a division opponent. I mean, this game matters.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
they're tied at this point. I think they're both 7-3, and I mean, Colts have got one. They won the first game, but I
yeah,
mean, Tennessee's game is just run the ball, kill the clock, and if you don't give Philip Rivers a chance, and he's throwing interceptions, I mean, I like Tennessee, but I think you're right. There's just no money to put into it.
and what you just said, run the ball, kill the clock. If they do that, if they have a 7-minute drive where India is offense is just sitting on the bench for that 7 minutes, and Rivers gets anxious, it's gonna end up 14-0, 7-0, 10-0. So I'm just not willing to go there. I think the Colts are a fantastic team, and I think that they could end up in the Super Bowl. I think they could beat the Chiefs. I think they could beat the Raiders. I think a lot of them, but I'm not willing to invest in them this weekend. There's other games that I like. In fact, this week there's a handful of games where uh, laying points just makes total sense. The I mean, there's a couple games where we're getting points, and I like being in that position too. But either way, I think that the Colts are a great team. I'm just not ready to go there this week. The 2 games in college that I'm playing that look crazy is FSU and LSU, and FSU is coming off of a 2-week layover. It'll be a little bit over that. It'll be I think actually I think it was the 14th last time they played, so it'll be 2 weeks by the time they kick off, and they're they're a better coach team than what you're seeing on the field, and they've played. This is who FSU has played: Pittsburgh. That's not an easy out. Pittsburgh is a good team. Louisville. Malik Cunningham is a quarterback that can be real trouble for any team. They played North Carolina. North Carolina for having 2 losses. They're probably the best team in the country that has 2 losses. Their quarterback, nobody's talking about him in the NFL, and I think that he's every bit as good as Trevor and Trask and some of these other quarterbacks that are getting all the attention to be a first round pick. And they played Miami, they've played Notre Dame. So Florida State has had So a really hard schedule. So I love getting 9.5 points in this game. I love it. And you can't not and don't forget, Florida State always has great recruits. They always have fantastic players, and so they just haven't had a chance to show it. They've played in 5 really difficult games this year. Um, what else we got? What else we got? Because I don't really have a ton more. Actually, I was going to talk about live. So the live games, I've said it week in and week out. The live games keep you alive, and I threw one out there to everybody mid game. Coastal Carolina, the original spread, and I'm a fanboy at this point. We should all be fanboys because Coastal Carolina has covered every single spread that's come their way. They've covered most first half spreads, and they're just a cash register. This is the biggest spread that we're asking them to cover this weekend at 16.5 or 17, depending on where you get it. Biggest spread that we've asked. We went with Coastal Carolina from being a dog every week to now being a favorite. And last week we were asking them to cover, I think it was 6.5. They ended up winning by 10 or 11. But mid game they were down, and I sent that message out. Coastal Carolina money line now. I think that's what I said. And that money line would have covered if they didn't cover the spread. If they would have just won by a little bit, that money line would have saved us. But it didn't. Coastal did coastal things. G Money McCall, it was fantastic. But that live bet was a perfect example of how you save yourself. You go back to the basics. Coastal Carolina was a 6.5 point favorite. So Vegas and people far smarter than us have done math that we will never understand and figured out that Coastal Carolina is probably going to win that game. So when you get an opportunity with a money line bet on that, you just can't pass it up. And again, that's the best strategy to take into any of these games, uh, as long as it's a reliable team with a reliable set of players and coaching systems. You see the favorite go down by 7. I look for it every single time. In fact, I'm cheering for my team if they're the favorite. I'm cheering for them to go down early because now I know I got some favorable odds on all this live action stuff. The Chiefs are a really good example this week. The Chiefs are 3.5 point favorites. Well, I'm not gonna look to the past. We're not gonna go there. You're laughing. I'm not this. But looking forward to the Chiefs this weekend against Tampa, I'm hoping that Tampa scores first. They're a hard one because Vegas doesn't adjust to the Chiefs very quickly. The Chiefs train Vegas to not so fast because last year in the playoffs you were able to get the Chiefs at plus 14 at plus 1400 for a money line win mid game. I mean, the Vegas is scared of them, but this week I like the Chiefs minus 3.5. I'm hoping Tampa scores first because at that point now we're gonna throw a money line on it, and I'll probably take another one where I get points. So at that point, I think that if Tampa goes ahead, Vegas will adjust differently because this is a very good team. It's not the Raiders. So if Tampa were to go ahead, well, now I'm going to take points in the Chiefs. I'm going to take points in the Chiefs first half, and I'm going to take money line Chiefs. And now I'm in it 4 times, and I feel like we're going to get them all. So that's what you look at. I wouldn't start doing crazy in-game bets on underdogs like Indiana. I love the play this week, but if they go down, I'm leaving it there. I'm not going to chase Indiana when they're down. I'm not going to chase Ole Miss. I'm certainly not going to chase Florida State. These are my upfront investments, but on some of these where you actually know the favorite is going to win the game and an early lead takes place, chase it, take it. You may as well cover yourself or just buy more because it's going up. It's everybody in this Discord is all into the stock market. God, last week 5 days in a row I bought Alibaba stock, and I'm not saying that because I'm anything special. I'm saying that because that's one of the best companies on the planet, and we were able to buy it at $258 and $260 and $262. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing in these games. You see the Chiefs go down, you take it. You just take it and you just buy it on the cheap. So that's kind of where I'm at for the week.
Well, you got
you got really saved on the. Sorry for the background. I'm like in another room. We got saved on that Coastal Carolina game because that game went down to that last second pick six, and I'm with it. I bet on it too. I had a -4.5 spread, and I was sweating it until I got that pick six at the end of the game.
Yeah, I did. We did get saved, but that money line, we would have had the money line. We weren't going to get the spread.
Sure,
but
sure.
But I agree with you. I agree. But that's part of why I love that team, because they find a way to cover. And yeah, it's lucky, but I guess if you put enough work into it, you catch those lucky breaks. But then there was the other game a couple weeks ago with Arizona, and then you catch bad luck on the other side. Arizona was a 3-point favorite. They scored a touchdown with like 1 second to go in the game, and rather than kick the extra point, they took a knee, and now it's 2 instead of the 3, which would have paid the push.
Yeah, same happened with Cleveland when Chubb broke that big run, jumped out of the 1 yard line, and fucked over everybody's spread of 6 points.
Yep, it happens. It happens. So, and those bigger spreads can be scary too. I mean, if you look, I have 3 games out of everything that we're looking at that's above 10, and they're college. Above anything above a touchdown in the NFL is very risky, and I just wouldn't do it.
Oh, I agree, and I'm a big Bucks.
What'd you say?
Oh, I'm a big Bucks fan. I hate you already because we're playing this weekend, especially after Monday night's piss poor performance. But yeah, I agree with the spread there.
Well, that's a frustrating team, and it never fails. We talked about this early in the season because Rob invested in them to win the Super Bowl, which not a bad play. I think he got it at 6 or 7 to 1. But my comment then was, a few years ago, the Eagles, one of their players called them the dream team because they went out and got all these free agents, and they're very frustrating because on paper nobody should be in the same arena with them, and they can't put it together. And the one thing they forgot about was an O-line, and Brady, he doesn't have any time to throw the ball, and all these receivers are great deep threats, and they could take the top off of defenses, but he doesn't have time to get it there. And
and his number one tackle or guard, Al Marpet's out.
Yeah, and and especially for this weekend, the Chiefs' defense is wildly underrated. It's they kind of mold themselves to whatever team they're playing, but they can sack the quarterback, and so I don't think Brady's going to find any time against the Chiefs this weekend either. And the Chiefs have been very committed to this run game. And they made this past week a very boring game to watch until Mahomes decided, all right, guys, hold my beer. Let me go do this. So what else you guys got?
I agree. I think that the biggest thing is any kind of pass rush on Brady right now is just shutting down the Bucks. You look at the Saints did it to us twice, and the Rams just did it to us.
Well, it didn't help. You got Chris Jones and Frank Clark, and that's Honey Badger comes down. It's going to be a good game for sure. The rankings for college. I think that's the last thing on the list.
Yeah, I'll talk about they don't really matter right now. There was a statistic about where the rankings end up from week 1, and typically, God, I think it was number 1 doesn't end up number 1, but the rankings, I think they got 1 through 4 right. Whatever the order is, it doesn't matter. Quite frankly, I as an Ohio State fan, I want to play Alabama. So, but I don't think it's going to stay that way. Florida is in the right spot. 1 through 6, I think they got it right. Cincinnati's ranked too high. Northwestern and Georgia are ranked too high. Oklahoma doesn't belong in the top 20. I don't understand why year after year this team gets all kinds of love. All they do, and I guess you could make the same argument for my Buckeyes, but all they do is find their way into the playoffs to get blown out by an SEC team. And they just don't belong. I think Indiana got hit a little bit too hard because they just played a really good game against Ohio State. So Indiana, I think, is low. BYU is low. Coastal is low. I mean, Coastal is low. They can. I think Coastal should be right next to Cincinnati. That they've played the same quality opponents, other than the SMU game that Cincinnati played. So wherever Cincinnati is, it's number 8. I'm not saying, or it's number 7. I don't think Coastal belongs number 7 in the country, but they certainly belong in the top 15. They're the only team in the country that's 8-0, other than BYU, and I think BYU got a nice kick in the nuts too. I think BYU should be where Cincinnati is. They should be right there, waiting to jump into the top 6.
Well, I think Georgia. I don't know if
Here
you
you
said
go.
that either. Georgia, 2 losses, is at number 9 in top 10. That's ridiculous.
Well, the Georgia loss to Bama, that was bad, but it was a loss to Bama. They're not going to get hit real hard for that. But the Georgia loss against Florida,
44-28.
and the way that happened, and then you go back at that point to the Bama loss, and well, now they just can't beat top 10 opponents. So Georgia shouldn't. They belong lower than that. But there's an odd SEC bias, and and ESPN runs ESPN is like the main deal behind the rankings. It's always on ESPN. They own college football for the most part, and for whatever reason, it's they.
Here you go. Here's one for you. So you talked about those teams that. How about in your Ohio State fan, which I don't. I'm sorry, my button keeps on going. I'm biased against Ohio State, but I'll say this. So Ohio State has played nobody all year. The only competition they played so far was Indiana. Great game. Indiana came back, which puts a big scare into it. Like, wow, Indiana may be actually good, but let's watch Indiana the rest of the season and see what they do. And they might caught Ohio State sleep. No big deal, right? I don't hate Ohio State. They respect them a good squad. I'll always say that. But fast forward. Okay, now you have A&M. They've lost one game all year, which was the number 1 team in the nation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then or number 2. And so we have Clemson, who lost to Notre Dame, and they lost. Granted, their quarterback was not there. Their Heisman candidate quarterback was not there, and we all could agree that's the reason they lost, because that went to double overtime without their quarterback. But they stayed top 4. Why are they ahead of A&M? Is it because of their quarterback? Because that's the only
Well,
why. And if not, then why is Ohio State top 4? Because they haven't played anybody, and they're not going to play anybody the rest of the year.
Well, so I'll go Clemson and A&M first. You're right. A&M should be 3, not Clemson. Clemson, that game, they did not lose that game because of bad quarterback play. That the quarterback that they have playing is one of the top quarterbacks ever rated to ever come out of the state of California. He is going to be just as big as Trevor Lawrence, but they didn't lose that game because of quarterback play. They lost that game because of defense, and Travis Etienne fumbled the ball. So they got a first or a second round draft pick running back that fumbled the ball repeatedly, and their defense looked bad. So I agree with you that A&M should be ranked above Clemson. As far as Ohio State goes, you're right. They haven't. I said it last week. I'm not willing to lay 21 points to find out if they can do it. I flat out said they haven't proven anything to me yet, and they really haven't. They should have blown Penn State out way bigger than they did. They should have beat Rutgers bigger than they did, or better yet, they shouldn't have allowed 27 points against Rutgers. So Ohio State, nonetheless, they're still undefeated, and they're in the Big Ten Conference. So if they don't belong there, it'll play out. And Clemson, that's going to be a tough one. It's going to be tough to get Clemson out and A&M in. Clemson, really, they don't have anything that's going to challenge them left. They have an ACC championship game, which one would think that would be against Notre Dame. So that'll be a pretty big game for them.
Yeah.
But on a fluke, if Notre Dame loses this week, and I don't even think that's that much of a fluke. I think that North Carolina is a fantastic football team.
Legit.
They're going against a great coach. They got a great running back and a phenomenal quarterback. So if North Carolina were to beat Clemson, well, they're out. But then what do you do with North Carolina?
North Carolina had their chance. They lost to Virginia. They lost that opportunity losing to Virginia.
Yeah. So I think if that were to happen this weekend, if North Carolina were to beat Notre Dame, you'll see A&M up there for sure. But Ohio State's road, they're going to win out. There's almost no way they don't win out. They have both teams up north and Illinois, and then they're going to play in a Big Ten championship game against what is now the number 8 team in the country, Northwestern. So they'll call that a signature win.
I forget how it breaks out for you guys up there. Where's Iowa at? Because Iowa was a pretty good squad. Have they one loss or are they still undefeated?
No, Iowa
They're
has 2.
3-2.
They're 3-2. I think they're probably going to lose again this weekend, but they are in the other division of the Big Ten. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, I misspoke. My bad.
yeah, so it's Northwestern or Wisconsin. Right now, it's Northwestern leading it because they have the tiebreaker. So, and even if it ends up being Wisconsin, Ohio State has owned them. So and they're getting credit for the late start in the team they finished as last year. So
yeah, no doubt.
I mean, the ranking, we could talk for hours about the rankings, but I don't really have anything else as far as the recording